So, hello everyone on our meeting with Upāsikā Viveka, and I will introduce her. She's an advanced Dhamma practitioner who's on 8 precepts for over 20 years and living in seclusion and practicing in seclusion. What that means is that she lives like an ascetic, keeping all the ascetic precepts. And, living like that for 20 years requires a lot of effort in practice and having good meditation and lots of wisdom. So she also lives in Khemavara Sanctuary, which is like her place where which she bought. So there's a sanctuary for wild animals. So all the animals that are on this land cannot be harmed. Which is important in Australia. And she's, of course, basing her practice mostly on teachings of the Buddha, but also she's connected with Ajahn Brahm, Ajahn Brahmali, and in general, Bodhinyana Monastery and Buddhist Society of Western Australia. So I know that it's important for many of you because you love Ajahn Brahm. So she's a friend, and from my personal perspective, she was my mentor for 3 years, and she still is in a way. So I had a lot of, I learned a lot from her, and I thought that I would organize this so you can learn from her as well, because it was such a value for me. So I hope it will be also a value for you. And so there is not much Dhamma talks of Viveka yet online. There are like 2 maybe or 3. But let's change that, and there will be more of them, so you can use these resources and taste this wonderful Dhamma. So, that's the introduction, and there will be guided meditation, Dhamma talk, and Q&A. And now I give voice to Viveka.
Thank you, Piotr. That was such a kind and lovely introduction. Thank you so much. That's really, really touching. Just one little correction. I've been living and practicing in seclusion for over 20 years, but I've only been on the 8 precepts for about 14. So we need to get right about all the technicalities.
Okay, thank you for correction and sorry for a mistake.
No, I don't think I ever made it clear. And for those who, I've been formally accredited as an advanced Dharma teacher by the BSWA. The line there is very clear. So I'm definitely a disciple of Ajahn Brahm and Ajahn Brahmali. I'm very happy to be here. What I wanted to do was share a very uplifting story with you all about an experience that I've had very recently. So the topic is Death Without Stress, an uplifting story about the fruits of practice. And I've been very blessed in my life. I've been close to the death journey of 2 people, 2 of the closest people in my life, my best friend and my mother, who died a few weeks ago. And so this is a true story and a real story about what a difference a little bit of preparation can make in having a good death. And it's so inspirational. And I find it such a gift that I want to share it with you all, because this is a fruit of practice that's available to everybody. So on the path, we often think that the fruits are something in the far distant. But it isn't really. We have fruits of practice, delicious, beautiful fruits of practice all the way along. So I just want to inspire you and give you hope and confidence that this is something that's available for you as well, here and now. And I'm aware that talking about death is very difficult for a lot of people, and I'm not sure about the culture in Poland in general terms, but here most people find it a difficult thing to talk about, and they view death. People would rather stick their head in the sand than actually talk about it and think about it. and from my experience, this has very bad results. And so we need to treat it as a natural thing and to reduce the fear about it and talk about it in good and wholesome ways. And then we can all have a peaceful, calm, good death. So that's my intention today, to share this wonderful gift that I've received with you. I've got a few notes and a few dot points. As Piotr said, I'm really not, I haven't given many Dhamma talks, so I'm quite nervous. I'm a practitioner, and to give a formal Dhamma talk is something very new to me. So I'll do my best. So please bear with me, and we'll see where we go. Okay. So it's a true story about following the path of Dhamma and how it has real results. So it's the reality of practice, not just theory, because so often when we talk about Dhamma, it's very theoretical. But I'm very pragmatic. I'm really into practice and the practical steps of what we do. But the Dhamma and practicing the Dhamma, even right from the very beginning, has really profound effects on us. And I think often we don't reflect enough on it. And it has the power to transform the most difficult and challenging events that we face and bring ease into our lives. I'm so grateful that I found the path, and it's made such a profound difference to me that I want to share this and inspire others to do that as well. We all want to die and being content and at peace. And it's possible to do that. It just takes a little bit of preparation. So when I was helping my best friend die, I spent 6 months with her. She died from cancer, and I was with her the whole way, and that wasn't a very good death. And I came back and I was talking to my mother about it, and she's always been very, very afraid of death, and so she asked me to do for her what I did for my friend. And so for the last 3 years, we've been doing a little bit of preparation. Now, she's not a Buddhist and doesn't really believe in any of the theory, but just basic preparation made all the difference. Okay, and really the fruits of this were evident in how she died, and it's a real gift and inspiring. Okay, sorry. So she managed to die well and reconciled and at peace, even though it was a very difficult death. So we all want to die in our sleep, content, you know, not waking up sort of in the midst of a nice dream, just never wake up, float away. But the reality is that only a few people manage to get that. And my mother was really afraid of having a tough time. And unfortunately, she had a freak accident where she fell and broke her neck and became paralyzed, and it took her 4 days to die. So this wasn't an easy death. It was quite a scary thing. But in spite of all of that, with the preparation, she died peaceful and happy and reconciled. And I'll take you through exactly how that happened and how it was demonstrated. So I just want to give you confidence that this applies in all circumstances. Okay, it's not just a fairy tale. This is a very real, true example of the fruits. So I'll just go into a little bit of a background preamble, talking in general terms. And then we'll do a guided meditation for about 30 minutes. And then I'll come back and talk more from a Dhamma perspective, all of the different points about how one can do preparation and the different steps. So more of a Dhamma thing. And I will encourage you all to ask questions, practical questions or any issues that you have. And we'll work through that. So I'm not sure how all the timings will go exactly, but we'll get there. Is that all right? Good. Thank you. Okay. So just to start with, even though this is so obvious, but people don't even think about this, you know, but wherever there is life, wherever there is birth, there's death. They're inexorably linked together. And everyone is going to go through this, you know. It's natural and it's normal. And if we keep it in mind, it helps us to lead a good life with no regrets and no remorse, and enables a good death with a sense of peace when facing this. Okay. So, in order to move forward, because one of the things you need to do is you need to talk about it. So the main activity that my mum and I did, whenever I would see her, we'd actually talk about this in different ways. And it was quite good because she was also quite sick with a lot of physical ailments and, you know, suffering quite a bit in daily life. And so when that's the case, your thoughts are naturally drawn to what happens when it gets worse and what might happen when you die. And so it's a really natural progression to not just complain about your illness and your symptoms, but to see that life and our bodies and everything else is a natural process. We're born, we get sick, we age, and we die, you know, but often we don't think about that end bit. So it's good to actually talk about this in the full context of what life is. Okay. And so when you do that, you also have to think what comes after death. And as Buddhists, we look at death right in the face, just as it is, that it's a transition. It's just a transition. It's just going from here to there, from this life to the next life. And with good preparation, one can have a really good death, being free from fear. So it's very important, and it's part of right view, to be aware of consciousness and mind and rebirth. And you don't have to believe in all of the details, but just to actually be aware that there is a consciousness, there is a continuation. And this gives great comfort and perspective for how you need to behave now, because you know that it's not the end when you die. There's actually something that follows on, and therefore you need to invest in this life into that which is going to follow. And part of that, and part of right view, is knowing, having the knowledge that living a good life here and what you do here determines the states that you're going to go on to. So if you live a good life, you know you're going to be reborn in good states. And so this gives motivation and impetus all the time for actually living an ethical life and doing those things that will lead to the good states. So this is all about sila and right effort. But when we talk about sila and right effort, normally it's a theory. You know, you think about it theoretically. But in this case, the fruits are evident. You know, watching my mother die, the fruits were absolutely evident. She had no regrets and no remorse, no guilt, none of these things, all because of living in that particular way. And what a return on your investment, right, to be able to die content and at peace. So I want to make that a reality for you, that sila and right effort isn't just a theoretical construct. It is tangible and important. Does that make sense? Okay. I think we undervalue this. You know, we really undervalue it. And, okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. So if one has lived a good life, then there's no fear about what lies on the other side. And you know that you're going to a good place, and it gives you strength and comfort during the difficult phase. And you have confidence that whatever suffering has to be endured during the process of dying is just a short duration, and everything will be all right. And I can't stress enough what a difference that confidence makes. And when I look at the death of my friend who had no such confidence, and the death of my mother who did have that confidence, the difference is like black and white. And so again, this shows the tangible results of the investment. Yeah. Okay. And with regards to the fear, even if you have to endure discomfort during the dying process, like my mother did, these days, with all of the medical advances, we've got so many wonderful drugs and things, you're basically guaranteed to have virtually no pain. So the big pain comes from the mental suffering. So what we're talking about here is getting rid of the mental suffering. And then really, if you've got no physical suffering and no mental suffering, the death process can be an enriching thing. It can be a gift and inspirational for those around. Okay. So, yep. Okay. Right. Okay. I'll just go off on a tangent. You can tell I'm not used to giving Dhamma talks. So I want to talk about something that Ajahn Chah always used to illustrate and talk about. He used to hold up a glass, right, or a cup, and he'd ask people, "Can you see the crack in the cup?" Right? And of course, you can't see the crack in the cup, but there is one there. It's the inherent crack in the glass. And it means that when the conditions come together, that glass is going to break. And of course, there's an inherent crack in each of us. And when the conditions come together, which are out of our control, we too are going to break. So we know that this glass is a fragile thing, and we need to look after it, because at any time, when the conditions arise, it's going to break. So it changes our attitude, how we deal with these things. They become precious to us. We don't take them for granted. And I think that's very important, because this gives us an indication of how we should live our lives. If we know that all the people that we're around, we're all walking around with an inherent crack within us. And whenever the conditions come together, we're going to break and die and move on and be removed from our circle of friends. So that means that if you have this in mind, you're going to be kind, right? How are you going to treat something carelessly and throw it around and, kick it around when you know it's got a crack in it, right? You're not. You're going to take care. And if this is front of mind, whenever you interact with anyone, you see the crack, it brings you back and enables you to live in a compassionate way. All of those little niggles, all of those things, they're really not important. And so if you think this is the last time that I may see this person, how do you want to speak to them? How do you want to leave? And, we all struggle with ill will and frustration and irritation and everything. And often they talk about the antidote to that is to think of them as being conditioned beings. That's one way to do it. But the other way to do it is to remember that there's an inherent crack, and that life is not guaranteed. At any time it can be stopped. And when you remember that, it puts everything into perspective. So the little things become irrelevant. The important things are highlighted. So I think this is a very nice way to view all of the people around us. So it helps to care for and appreciate each other in the present moment. So, and we never know when the time will come, because my mother, she came down for breakfast and sat down at the breakfast table and started drinking her cup of coffee. And she put down her cup of coffee and was going to go upstairs to the bathroom. And she fell and broke her neck and had to go to hospital. It took her 4 days to die. But she never came back to finish that cup of coffee. And this is the thing, we all will often think that death will somehow, you'll have some warning or there'll be some plan or something, but that inherent crack is there. And when the conditions come together, it just happens. So it's not a theory, it's real. And I think that's why you find that when people have gone through this, and many of you may have gone through this with an unexpected death, it sort of shocks you. It makes you reassess life and how you deal with people. And I have to say, this isn't a tragedy. This is normal reality. And if we prepared for it, you can come out of it at peace, and there's no grief. And you know that because you've had this in mind, your relationships have been of a quality that there are no regrets. Okay, so that's why it's so important to keep this in mind all the time, so that there are no regrets. And then when it happens unexpectedly, there's an appreciation of all that's gone before and an acceptance of the reality of the cycle of life and death, and the ability to let go with ease and peace. And I want to share with you some of the beautiful words, a special gift that my mother gave to the family. Now, the rest of the family hadn't done any preparation, so they weren't able to let go, and there were some unsaid things, and during the process we were able to facilitate that so that people could say what they needed to say. But Mum had finished all her business. She was reconciled, and she woke up after a couple of days. Well, she regained consciousness, and she said these beautiful words to everybody. Incredible inspirational words. And she's not a Buddhist, right? We've just done a little bit of preparation over a few years. And she said to everyone, she looked at everybody and she said, I love you. I know you all love me. I'm going to miss you, but it's my time to go. And I've let you all go. Now you all have to let me go. Now, isn't that just magnificent? Isn't that just magnificent? It's magnificent because she was reconciled and at peace. And by saying that, everyone could see that. And it also put the onus onto them to say, well, you have to let me go too. So it's a two-way thing. And it put them at peace, and it gave them great comfort. So this preparation for a good death is not just for yourself, but it also eases the situation for all those around you. Yeah. And this was completely different to the way that my friend died. They were in denial. They were in, angry and blaming and fighting and doing all kinds of things. It was very different. And the difference was that my mother had a couple years of preparation, and my friend had no preparation. And doing work with her on this just in the last, she was in denial for the first 8 months of her illness, and only in the last 4 weeks did she come to accept it. And then we started the preparation. But that really wasn't long enough time for it to go deep. And when you're in extremis, when you're in that situation, it's actually too late to do the preparation. You have to do it in advance. So that's why I'm saying this to everybody. So a little bit of investment now will yield the results in the future. So don't put it off because you don't know. And because she and I worked on this because I was her carer, but her family didn't work on it, and they were in denial and grief right up until her last breath. And then they couldn't deny that she was going to die anymore. But their suffering was awful. And that could all be avoided. And so I'm motivated to share this with as many people as I can so that no one else has to go through this suffering. In my eyes, it's an unnecessary suffering because it's so easy to do some preparation. And it's an inspiring thing, not a scary thing. Who doesn't want to die content and peaceful? And it's within our reach. I hope you feel that. Okay. So as she was dying, I was able to be happy for her. It was magnificent, right? I was actually able to be by her side, watching her. I was there the whole time. And I was able to be happy for her and her letting go and her imminent release. I was happy that she was going to leave the broken body and be free. It was a wonderful thing. It was a wonderful thing. So was her death a cause to be sad? No, not for Mum at all, not for me. But for others, of course, it is sad. And it's especially sad if you are missing their company, right? Because it's the end of something. But what she did was she left us with a treasure trove of memories. But it is difficult after someone's died and been removed from our lives, because there is grief, and that's natural, grief and loss, because especially if they've been a good influence in our lives and they've given us pleasure and comfort, that's going to stop. But you have the treasure troves of memories. And this is the difference where you focus, whether you focus on the loss or whether you focus on the wonderful things that you've had. And I think it's an artifact of our, an affliction of our modern way of looking at things, and the way funerals are done is that everyone emphasizes the grief and loss, and generally they don't emphasize the gifts, the memories, the wonderful experience. And that's not very beneficial. So I think that's something that Buddhism can really give to the world by showing how you can focus. And I mean, this is right focus, right attention, and keeping these things in balance. So looking at it in the right way leads to peace and happiness, and rather than grief. Okay, so one of the big lessons I've learned in my life is how wonderful it is not to have any unfinished business. Okay, this is very important. Unfinished business leads to regrets and remorse and craving. So we should constantly be aware that life is finite, just like we accept all other experiences are temporary. So I want you all to think about a wonderful experience that you've had that stayed in your mind, a memory you hold on to that makes you feel good, like a wonderful concert or an exhilarating performance of some kind, a magical sunset where everything was just perfect, anything where you remember that when you remember it, it leads to a feeling of happiness and appreciation. And that's the thing where you think back and you say, wow, How lucky was I to experience that? Right? There are experiences like that. And I have one that I remember all the time. I went on a holiday to Vanuatu. It was with my parents. I handed in my PhD and they rewarded me with a trip overseas. And we stayed on this remote lagoon in Vanuatu, not touristy, and it was picture perfect, you know, just a turquoise blue waters, beautiful temperature, the tropical plants, and I was wading through the lagoon. The lagoon wasn't very deep. It was about neck deep at the deepest, and I went for a long distance, and I spent hours just walking through it. There was no difference in temperature between the air and the water, the scent of the beautiful flowers, being gently buoyed on the water, and really it was like floating in heaven. You might be able to tell I'm remembering it now, and it's transporting me back there to the beautiful feelings, right? But that experience ended. It was impermanent and temporary. But am I sad? Am I saying, oh, I'm never going to have that experience again? No. I'm remembering how magnificent it was, and I remember it and dwell in that thought whenever I want to feel at peace and relaxed. When I'm agitated, all I have to do is put my mind back and I re-experience it, and it's magnificent. And so this is what we can do, remembering the good aspects of the times we've shared with someone, the gifts they've given us, and rejoice in those rather than focusing on the grief of loss, that it's finished now. Of course it's finished. It's always going to be finished. Every single experience is temporary and going to be finished. This is all a question of good attention, where you focus. I hope that resonates. So whenever I recall that, I appreciate that experience with gratitude, and gratitude is such an important emotion here. And I just say, wow, how lucky am I to have experienced that? How lucky am I? Right? Of course it finished, but how lucky am I that it was there? There's just appreciation and gratitude. And if we can apply this way of remembering people we love, there's no grief, or much less grief. Because, of course, you're going to be sad, you know, but it's about the balance. So, so many wonderful memories. And it's exactly because we know that life's finite that we can use that to inspire us to live our best lives, appreciating every moment, right? So if I was in that lagoon, wading through that water, planning what I was going to do next week, that wouldn't have been a nice memory. I wouldn't have had that memory at all, because I'm not focusing on the present and what's actually happening. I'm not appreciating what's happening. And this is why this type of life lesson is so important, because we can appreciate the time we are spending with the people in front of us, that we care for the person in front of us. We know it's precious because it's finite. Okay, sometimes we all have difficult situations and you're saying, oh, I hope this is finite, I hope it finishes soon. But again, that's just the way of focusing. So I'd like to go into the meditation now, if that's all right. And I want to have a focus on gratitude in this meditation. We'll meditate for half an hour and I will guide us into it, but I want you to have, pull up this attitude of gratitude. Feel it. You can actually feel it. It envelops your heart. Let it grow, grow and spread out over your body and spread out all around you, this gratitude. So let's do that then. So please sit comfortably I'll just put on my timer. And close your eyes and take a couple of deep breaths. Let go. Let go of all the things around. Just shake it off like a dog would shake water out of its fur. Take a moment to ground yourself and feel your body. And I like to start with a body scan. And you can have an attitude of gratitude when you do your body scan. So I start with the feet. Hello, feet. Feel any stress or any discomfort, any pain. And if there's anything like that, just send metta to it. And I have an attitude of gratitude. Thank you, feet. Thank you, you work so hard. I don't think of you, and you just carry me around all day, every day, day in, day out, year after year. Thank you, feet. You've done a great job. You can rest now. Be at ease. And so we move up our calves. Thank you, calves. To our knees. Soothing any aches or pains. They work so hard. Rest now. Rest now. And up the thighs, big muscles, working so hard. Rest now. Thank you. To our hips, and our lower back. Thank you, back. You've served me so well for so many years. Time for you to relax. Relax now. Moving up the backbone. Every single vertebra. Relax. Thank you so much. And moving to the front of the body, to the abdomen, to all of the organs. Never even think about your organs. You tirelessly work away, keeping me alive, so I can follow this path and be kind. Thank you Thank you. And up to the diaphragm and the lungs. How many breaths you've taken in this life. Working so hard. It's time for you to rest. Rest now. Relax. Up the back to the shoulders and the shoulder blades, big muscles and ligaments, the arms lifting and working, the hands. Thank you so much. You've worked so hard. Relax now. Rest. Let go. Rest. Rest in peace. Rest in peace. And the neck, each vertebra, and to the skull, and across the scalp, down the forehead, across the eyes. Thank you. Relax. Rest now. Rest now. Eyes are closed. No longer having to work to see, bombarded by sight. Still. All the senses. You can be still now. Withdraw inside. You can switch off. Rest. Be at peace. Be still. Beautiful stillness. Beautiful rest. Moving inside. I'm so grateful for it. Thank you. I'm going to be quiet now and rejoice in the stillness and revel in the peace. Coming close to the end of the meditation. Take your time. Thank you for the time to have such peace. Thank you for the space. You come back anytime. But it's time to come back up. Take a few deep breaths. When you're ready, open your eyes and come back. Well, I hope you feel a bit peaceful.
Yes, very peaceful. Thank you so much.
Was that all right? Is everyone feeling okay?
That was amazing. Thank you.
You know, Poland might be a lot of kilometers away, but it feels like you're very close, and metta can travel across the distance like this.
Yeah, I felt that as well. So thank you so much for being there for us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I'm so happy to be able to share this with you. I feel it's a gift I received, and I hope that you receive it and get benefit from it too.
We surely will. We already did, and it will echo in our lives for sure, in a positive way.
Always hard to start talking again. So what I did to begin with was a general overview and setting the attitude. So I thought what would be useful is to get into this from a slightly deeper Dhamma perspective. So actually talking about the things. Is that all right for people, or do you want to just chillax more and go straight into questions?
I think, as you said in the beginning, that you will give the second half of the talk after the meditation, so I would stick to the plan.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, what can we do for preparation? So this is the stuff that I love because it's the really practical stuff. It's how to turn the theory into practice. And, you know, I'm very much into the Buddhist path being a path of practice. But I'm still not, I'm going to talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it in general terms. I'm not going to get into any doctrinal issues. I'll just make mentions of different factors that I think you should all be familiar with. So, and if anyone isn't, you can ask whatever questions you like at the end and get as detailed as you like. Ask whatever you like. So with preparation, the first thing is to be aware that life is finite. As the Buddha said, I mean, that's the whole point. We have rebirth, so we have birth, life, death, birth, life, death. So it's good to contemplate this. And there are many ways to contemplate death. For many different fruits and results. And what I'm talking about today is actually contemplating death in such a way that it's easy to let go when the time comes. So that means no regrets or remorse. So sila, 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 and some more sila. And look, I'll share a little story with you because it was something that profoundly influenced me. Some 22 or 3 years ago, I was very, very ill, and I had a very bad seizure, and I was jolted out of my bed and onto the floor, and I stopped breathing and my heart stopped. I was paralyzed, but I was fully conscious, and I was very surprised because you don't expect it. I thought, my life is over now, because I knew that I was going to be dead in a couple of minutes. You can't breathe and there's no heartbeat, and then that's the end. And as I was thinking that, regret arose in me, strongly. And I mean, I hadn't done anything terrible, but they were little regrets. And I thought, I'm not finished. I'm not finished with life. I have to fix this stuff. And it was really strong. So I wasn't at peace. I wasn't letting go. I had unfinished business. And it came to pass that I was able to, after some minutes, I was able to start breathing again, and here I am, and I'm so thankful for that. But it really changed my life, because from that day onwards I realized how bad regrets are and how bad remorse is and how it affects you. And I vowed never to be in that situation again. So since that day, which was in June 2002, I can tell you to the day, I've lived my life without accumulating regrets. And basically, this is the Noble Eightfold Path. And the thing is, how you do that is through the practice of sila. And if you realize what's at stake, you'll never take sila for granted. You'll use every single opportunity. And so I encourage you all just to use the experience of others to highlight that for yourselves. And of course we can't be perfect, and you have to apply sila to yourself. We're only human. But if you know you've tried, and you've tried your best, it doesn't mean you have to succeed, but if you've done your best, that's the best you can do, and that will lead to no regrets and no remorse. So that's a very important lesson, and I hope you can take it on board a little bit. The other important thing to do in preparation, apart from sila and living well, is the importance of belief. So if you're a materialist and you think that when you die, that's it, bang, there's really not much impetus for doing anything, because if you have regrets or not, it totally doesn't matter. You'll just be dead. But if you're aware that consciousness travels on, that there's rebirth, then it's a completely different matter, and you'll take this very seriously. So contemplating rebirth, contemplating consciousness, going into meditation, seeing how mind operates and investing in mind is a method of preparation. And so when you think about death and death contemplation, you can also contemplate that mind will continue. The body will die, but the mind will move on and be reborn. So how do you want to be reborn? So you want to be reborn in a nice place, and you know this is karma. You're reborn as you live. You're reborn in the station of your mind. So it's the investment of where you want your mind to be at the time of death. So these are all aspects of death contemplation. It's a beautiful thing. And as we could see in the examples I gave, the fruits are magnificent. So the other part of preparation is to have no unfinished business. This also means making peace with the past. Okay, so whatever it is, if it's guilt or whether it's blame, you do everything that's required to make peace with the past. And sometimes this requires going into difficult areas, with areas of trauma or bad experiences and things like that. But it's reconciling and coming to peace with the past, so that it's not an anchor. It doesn't keep you there, and it doesn't affect the station of your mind. Your mind is free from that. And it's the same with regards to desire for the future, so that you can let go easily. The business we have in this life is just superficial little business. The important business is the quality of our hearts and minds. And that's sort of the really long-term future. That's not what we're doing next week or next year. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then there's another aspect with regards to this, and that's the process of support during the dying process. And this isn't so much for when we're dying ourselves, but when someone around us is dying. And again, this isn't talked about much, and it's actually so easy to make it easeful for the person who's dying. And really, it all comes down to kindness. Okay, so the most important point is, the focus isn't on me, right? The focus is on the person and being kind to the person. So again, this isn't focusing on the grief and the loss. Oh, they're going, I'm going to be without this, poor me, And I mean, I don't mean to make light of it, because it's not a light thing. But if you focus on the other and you're able to put the self in the background, it's very easy to be kind. You're guided by where the person is. Kindness, kindness, kindness. One of the ways it's so tangible, and in both cases with my best friend and with my mother, it was very much bathing the entire room in metta, making a bubble of metta, to keep all of the unwholesome thoughts at bay, and to really concentrate the wholesome thoughts. And, sometimes unwholesome comes in. You might have staff that are angry or agitated or not very nice, or some family members who might have issues and who are acting out. And then you turn it into a force field of metta, surrounding the bubble of the person. And it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing you can do. And it's not, when I say force field of metta, it's not being forceful with the other people, because everyone is doing their best and everyone is suffering. But it's really just projecting from within in an intangible way, but it is a felt presence, and it makes a very big difference. We actually had comments by the staff, all the nursing staff in the ICU. It was the most incredible and bizarre experience. We had staff thanking us, you know, coming up and saying, thank you. It's a privilege to watch how you're handling this dying process. It was incredible. And it's not that difficult, okay? With a little bit of preparation, this is within the grasp of everybody. Please be confident. So it's joy, peace, and gratitude. This is what generates, what enables you to do it. So if you can focus on those things, then you will have those positive emotions to use as the furnace to drive the metta bubble. And the other thing that's very important is patience, because it'll take as long as it takes. And you're just present, and you give the gift of patience. You know, you just put time on hold and you just go with it. And letting go, you know, as I said, those words, when she said, I've let you all go, now you all have to let me go. And you have to combine that together with the patience. And I don't know, you know, when you're sitting peacefully in nature, have you ever had the experience when, like, you know, a butterfly comes and lands on your hand or your arm, and you just watch it with calm, peaceful patience, you know, and it will just take off when it's ready and fly away when it's ready. And it feels so beautiful when you do that. It's like you're non-interfering. It's a natural, beautiful process. And that's also what's needed. It's so beautiful in this circumstance when you can actually do that. And then afterwards, what to do with regards to the afterwards. So it's the grief and loss versus celebration and peace. And this is where you focus. So the sadness is, of course, okay, but it needs to be in balance. And so you don't become a slave just to, you know, prior conditioning. You have to recondition yourself. You have to train for how to move attention to beneficial areas. This is all the skills that you practice in right effort on the Noble Eightfold Path. And I can't emphasize enough how important and useful a skill that is, not just in this circumstance, but in every circumstance in life. And that's a talk in itself. There we go. And then the other thing is afterwards, you focus on, for example, you know, when the Buddha, similarly, when he talks about everything being borrowed goods, okay, so you can really see the borrowed goods. You know, we don't really think of the person as a borrowed good, but in a sense they are. You know, it's like that glass with a crack in it and it's broken. You are only borrowing the cup, you know, it's gone. But it's also, you see them having to let go of everything that they've accumulated, and that whatever they had were borrowed goods. And I'm halfway through packing up my mother's things, and because she died unexpectedly, all of her projects, half-finished projects, were all around the place. And you can see, you know, they really are borrowed goods. So you reassess their importance and their value. And it doesn't mean you don't care about what you do, but you do it in the present. You do it in the present rather than from an attitude of accumulation for the future. So everything you do with care, you do with kindness. It's the focus on the present. I hope that makes sense. And also afterwards you reflect on the perspective, you know, from all of these angles I've said. So, you know, with the aim of moving towards greater equanimity, more ease because you're aware of the crack and the impermanence in life in all of us. And you use that to direct your actions in the future. And it's also so important because it really cuts through all the clutter and rubbish, and you reassess what's important in life. And you'll know this from your own experience. If you've had some kind of scare or you've lost someone near you, you realize what is unimportant and what is important. And by keeping this stuff in mind, it helps you, again, have right attention because you attribute the right value to all of the things in your life. You're not misattributing value to certain things. I remember I used to be a workaholic and a career woman in another lifetime. But when I left work, I used to be so worried about all the numbers. All of the outcome measurements, all of the dollars, all of these different things. And after I left, they were nothing. They were nothing at all. What remained was the relationships with the people. And I just have to laugh now because it's just, my focus was so intense on the wrong things. Sure, you have to have focus and attention on those things, but they're just, pardon me. They're not the most important part. So going forward, okay, so what do we do to prepare and with regards to going forward? Cherish all those around you. The glass has got a crack in it. Really simple, really hard, but that's what needs to be done. Live in the present. Care about what's in front of you. Don't spend all of your time in the future and the past. Do not accumulate regrets. Just don't do it. Try not to do it. It's a wonderful gift to yourself. And live as you'd like to die and be reborn. All the good traits you want. The beneficial things that make you feel good and have a good life. That's how you want to live. If that's, live as you want to die. And we are the owners of our own karma. So we're the architects of our future. And all of these things help us to be good architects, help us to make good choices. And I'll just end with something that I think is so important. Just cultivate contentment. Sometimes the Dhamma can be so complicated. And when you've got all the lists and the categories and the duties and the practices and everything else, there's kindness and contentment. And those two things basically cover, what you have to do that is the path, right? And so it'll happen naturally. And look, that's all I have prepared. So I hope that there's something in there that can be of some use or some inspiration to somebody. And thank you so much for allowing me to speak to you today. Thank you.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Viveka. Amazing talk. I think we are all moved pretty deeply by it. So if anyone got some questions, please write them down on the chat and I will read them. And I can start, maybe?
Yes, I love questions. And feel free to ask whatever you like. There's nothing too silly. There's nothing too, just go for it.
Yeah, so I have like one big question, let's say, because when we were doing this meditation and the gratitude, then I felt so peaceful and happy because there's actually so many things to be grateful for, and this really works very well. And it also reminds me of some of my most beautiful moments, like spiritually in my life, that when you have this experience that life feels good in general. And it's completely different because usually life doesn't feel so good. So, and that's the tricky question, because in the Buddha's teachings, you can find these two approaches. That one, like you presented today, that we should cherish things and to be positive and happy and have this metta and gratitude. But on the other hand, there are these teachings that everything is suffering, everything is anicca, dukkha, anatta. And it's like you shouldn't cherish anything. Don't be, attached. And that's the thing, that there's a big deal of confusion about these two things, because of course we want to practice like the Buddha taught us. And let's say that I feel in my heart that actually this path of gratitude is what's better, and I feel this is the way. But there is this great fear that you're like transgressing some teachings of the Buddha, that these contemplations, negative contemplations. So, yeah.
Yep. Excellent question. Magnificent. They're not incompatible, and they're both in the Buddha's teachings. I mean, when you think about the Buddha's teachings, when he talks about, Brahma Viharas, when he talks about the Nusati, so, Sila Nusati and Chaga Nusati and, the qualities of the Buddha, you expand those, and that covers all the things we're talking about. That is exactly gratitude and focusing on the good things. The teachings of right effort, it's how to give rise to good states and not bad states. But with regards to the other practices, they're for different purposes. So you don't contemplate the repulsion, for example, if you're wanting to, this is to actually, they're the antidotes to the defilements. Okay, so greed and all of those things, and sensuality. So it depends what job you're doing at what stage on the path, right? Because there's the right practice at the right time, dependent on what conditions you have within yourself and what conditions are around you in the world. So I think that I've done all of the practices, right, to strong degrees. But they're really targeted, the right thing at the right time. And is that enough of an answer? It can be an enormous answer. I mean, really, we're talking about the entirety of the path. But is that enough to just reconcile that issue for you?
Maybe a little follow-up question. How would you recommend these intervals between practices? Because I can imagine many ways. For example, sometimes the same day you can have so many perceptions switching all the time. Or on the other hand, you can, for example, for a month, focus on one thing, or for a year or something. Because for me, it's a lot chaos that depending on the mood, I usually, apply certain perception, but maybe it's too chaotic. I don't know.
Okay. I think that it has a lot to do with the underlying mind state. So, if you're not feeling good, if you've got a little bit of depression or a bit of sadness or those types of things, and that's there in the background, then the positive practices are good. You don't want to do the negative side of the practices at that time, because that'll just pull you down further. So those practices are really for when you're feeling more robust. That's what I'd say as the rule of thumb. So I wouldn't say it's a reactive thing. You do this, multiple times a day, but it's much more like slow undulations, and it depends on your underlying mental state. So when you're robust, you can have the tough practice, and when you're a little bit sensitive, do the gentle practice.
Yeah, I think we will get to next questions in a sec, but just I will follow up with this a little bit, because I feel when we are in such a spot that we have a lot to practice to get our defilements weaker and to develop our good qualities, then sometimes reaching too high can be actually counterproductive. And so do you think it's possible to just have this, let's say for a few years, I will practice like on the level of just 5 precepts and generosity and this gratitude. So I actually can become robust. So at some point it can go deeper, like just hold it lightly, so to speak, that can change in the future.
Yes, absolutely. But I wouldn't make a concrete plan with a time frame. You just have that general attitude, because of course that's enough. Of course that's enough. I think we, it's the human tendency to want to go for the top, and mistakenly people think the top is having to be an arahant, and having suppressed everything, and you have to be the top monastic, have the most aesthetic life. But this really is, it's just a bizarre form of craving, really. That's not cultivating contentment. And that's why it might sound simple when I say cultivate contentment, but it's actually very deep. And, I'd say keep that in mind, and these become natural guides. So be kind, sila to others, to yourself. As the Buddha says, you have to be, good behavior is being a friend to yourself and a friend to others, and cultivate a contented attitude. I hope that's enough of a guide.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I will start reading the questions that people write right now. So first, Bea asks, that was such a great talk. A lot of wisdom spoke through you. Amazing. I wonder how to prepare for passing of abusive parent. How to prepare to go through this time with peace, gratitude, and metta toward the parent.
Okay. It's about forgiveness. There's many levels, depending what level of practice you're at, but remembering non-self, that they're conditioned beings, that, they really don't have many options for how they behave, that it's not you personally, even though you're their child. They would behave that way if there was another being in your place. They'd behave the same way to that being, because that's the way they're programmed to behave. And knowing that, then to try to forgive. And it can be difficult, but just work at it and work backwards from it. A lot of this is, the things that anchor us in the past. You also know that whatever effort you put in, it's actually for your own benefit, because if you are able to forgive, you're cutting the anchor, the line to the anchor, so you'll actually be better off yourself. So it's not just about giving the other person. So again, you're being a friend to yourself and to the other. And so really it's about forgiveness, and then you can deal with them with kindness.
Sadhu, that's such a beautiful answer. Okay, now the simple question. Is it worth to practice Maranasati, or should we just focus on metta?
I suppose this is related to what Piotr was saying. Each at their right time, each is for a different purpose. There's no yes or no to any of these things. Sometimes Maranasati is exactly right. Sometimes metta is exactly right. You know what? I actually found a way to do them both together. I like my everything is finished now meditation, which is contemplating death and letting go of the body and letting go of the senses, and letting them go with metta and floating off. It's fabulous. It's like practicing for a beautiful death.
Thank you so much. Okay, next question. Firstly, Isabella Chabango writes, firstly, thank you for the inspiring Dharma talk. My question is, could you please share some right views that can help me make peace with the past and let go of regrets?
Well, right view is getting things into perspective, the correct perspective. So in this case, it's about knowing that the past is finished. When I went through that experience myself where I had regrets, and that day that I took the vow to live without regrets forever after, I went and made, I actually contacted people, and I said sorry where it was necessary. And, in some places that's appropriate, in other places it isn't appropriate, but I drew a line under it so that you can actually move on. So it's like from this day forward. And this reminds me, this is very much where I find the sutta on Angulimala so inspiring. For those who don't know, Angulimala was a serial killer that the Buddha encountered, and he changed his ways and became a disciple of the Buddha and went forth as a monk and actually attained arahantship. And the most beautiful phrase I find is when he talks about being reborn in the Dhamma. So it's when you have the intention to leave the stuff behind and to move on in a new direction. And it's like your slate is wiped clean. You're reborn in the Dhamma from that intention. And sometimes when I've done things that I'm not happy with, I retake the precepts and I view it in my own mind like it's a wiping the slate clean. It's that moment of being reborn into the Dhamma. So that helps leave the past behind. There was another part to the question, was there?
To make peace with the past and let go of regrets. So I think you've covered that.
Good.
Very beautiful. Thank you. Okay. Michał Goździk asks, I would like to ask why your mother was not a Buddhist. What was your attitude towards it, especially in the last few weeks of her life?
Oh, my mother wasn't a Buddhist because my family isn't a Buddhist. When I first became serious about this, they thought I'd joined a cult. I absolutely don't know anything about it at all. They're sort of just like superficial Christians and quite materialistic, But my mother was the most spiritual of everybody. She in the family, and my attitude is that, well, I was like that too. So it's until you actually gain a different experience and different perspective, you're the sum of your prior conditioning, and that's okay. So what my job is to provide different conditioning to steer them in a beneficial direction for their own benefit and the benefit of everyone else. Now that doesn't mean converting them to Buddhism, but I find the most powerful thing is to provide an example. And they've all noticed the profound changes in my own life and how much happier I am. And the closest part of the family were in the death room of my mother. And my aunt looked at me and she said, "Why are you smiling?" And I said, "I'm happy for my mum because she's about to be released from her broken body." And, that's how we make an impact.
Sadhu. Okay. Piotr asks, how to get rid of doubts about reincarnation? Only from October I started practicing, so I don't have the experience of previous lives yet, but I want to believe that death is not the end. It would be depressing and life looks pointless if there is nothing.
All right, you don't have to get rid of your doubt. It'll fade away as you keep exploring. Just keep an open mind. What if? What if? Maybe. And if there's a what if and a maybe, then that's enough motivation to practice. The other thing you can do is, there's actually been quite a lot of research, very, high standard scientific research on near-death experiences and things like that. There's a wonderful book called After. You can read things like that, but I wouldn't read them too much because they have all kinds of layers of interpretation on them. But at least you know that there is so much evidence that the mind, it's not just our body, that the mind actually also exists. And just knowing that is enough, really, as a start. So I'd just say, chillax, go with the flow. You don't have to be a believer. Just don't dismiss it.
Thank you. Katarzyna asks, Dear Viveka, I used to think that when the time comes to die, I will go kicking and screaming. Do not go gentle, etc. I now realize that would be actually hurting myself. If it's comfortable, can you talk a bit about what your friend did not do that she could have to make her dying easier for herself? Thank you for the wonderful talk. Death can be a taboo and there are few opportunities to talk about it.
Well, thank you. Yes, my poor, wonderful friend died kicking and screaming. They wanted to deny death. And, it reminds me of that fable, who was it, the king who stood in front of the ocean and said, I'm going to stop the tide, stop. And of course it's impossible because the tides go in and they go out. And where there's life, there's death. If you're alive, you're going to die. But some people want to pretend that doesn't exist. They put their head in the sand. And, and their attitude, so she died from cancer. And their attitude was, kicking and screaming, we're going to beat this. We're going to beat death. And it was, for example, her children had T-shirts made. And I don't know how you are with swearing in Poland. In Australia, we're quite relaxed about it. But their T-shirts were like these capital letters of F, cancer. You know what F stands for, right? I mean, that was the attitude. And she's there, sick as a dog, and they're saying, don't give in. You can beat it. And that's tough. That's tough. So if they'd done a little bit more preparation, because the family had no preparation, and they came from here, they, to come to appreciate that life and death are just two blips in the process, right? And where there's one, there's the other. You just can't get away from it. And you have to see the normality of it. Like I said, with that example of any experience we have, we know any experience we have is going to finish. Like this Dhamma talk, right? There's a beginning, the birth, right? There's the talk, and there's the end of the talk, the death. You can't have one without the other. There's no permanence here. And it's exactly the same with life. And you just have to see it for what it is, without the fantasies, without the Disneyland treatment,
Thank you so much. Agata asks, thank you for wonderful meditation. Could I please ask you about more details about consciousness going through from one life to the next? Are we conscious of that moment of transition? How does it look? do we have a chance in the next life to be also on the Buddhist path, even if we are not a Sotapanna before we die?
Yes, absolutely have a chance to be on the Buddhist path. Absolutely. And that's all about, part of the, well, that's the preparation. You live as you want to die. So if you are inclining your mind and your character traits and everything, you're conditioning everything, you're conditioning the sankharas, you're conditioning the nama, you're conditioning all of these things, and they will go with you. It's like that wonderful simile that Ajahn Brahm gives of the tree in the forest, the great big tree, and it's inclining in a particular direction, and when it falls, it's likely to fall in the direction of the inclination. And so that's what reconditioning is about. And the more you recondition yourself purposefully in the way that you want to go, the more likely it is that that's, exactly where you'll fall. I've forgotten the other part of the question, I'm sorry.
I think it was about if we are conscious of the process.
Okay, well, I have no memory of it myself, so I can't tell you definitely. I think, there's evidence that some people, a few rare people are, and otherwise it's quite unconscious. There's all of the near-death studies and everything, which gives a lot of information, but personally, I don't find it that useful to speculate about these things in too much detail, just to have a general idea. That's part of the surprise. Be open to what comes. Gently curious. We'll all see, won't we?
Thank you so much. And last question from Basha. Thank you, Viveka, for this heartwarming and inspiring Dhamma talk. Can you give some tips for talking with someone who is dying?
Well, I suppose they were the things that I said. Kindness, joy, peace and gratitude, patience and letting go. So just be realistic. That's the really important thing. It doesn't mean you have to be harsh, but just realistic. So just talk about it as it's a matter of fact. So
I can just, say it because I know Basha, and she's probably asking not about someone very close because she works in a hospital. So probably she means, when you are a hospital worker, how to support people who are on the...
Okay, she works in a hospital. Yeah. So so as a nurse, you're used to having to talk about all kinds of things, like, going to the toilet and you wash people and you do this, all of the things that generally are difficult to talk about. So you have the same attitude to death and dying. You don't treat it any differently. It's a bodily function. Everyone has questions about it. Sometimes, really basic questions like, will I be incontinent? Well, this and this. And you just talk about it matter of fact. Just kind, matter of fact. And if you come from the right intention, if you come from a place of respectful care, that will come through, and you can ask and say anything. If you come, and I've got a background in psych, so, and I've worked in all kinds of difficult situations, and I've had to ask, in children's protection work, for example, the most gory, horrific personal questions. But if you come from a place of genuine respect and caring, you can basically talk about anything. And you can say, what will help you? That's the other thing. You ask the person, what would help you? How can I help you? What would you like to talk about? And rather than putting your views on the person, you ask them and they will tell you, and you follow that. And sometimes when people find that difficult, you can sort of, give them openings to open up, or you can talk about someone else or someone else's experience or something like that. If you sense that they want to talk about something that's difficult, you can move it to like a third person so that it's not quite so confronting. I'm sure she'll do fantastically. I hope you do fantastically.
Thank you so much, Viveka, for all your wise answers and for your beautiful energy. So that was the last question. So thank you so much for being there for us. Sadhu, 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 anumodami. And as I said, now I'm speaking to everyone. I told you it's gonna be great. So glad you came, and I have a good news because we will have two more, at least two more in some time. Because next Sunday we will have also meeting with Viveka when she will speak about the path of practice, and in next month at the end of February, we will have talk about perception, but this time it will be with Polish translation. And of course, I hope if Viveka allows, then we will upload this talk as well. I will try to make the subtitles. And of course, I will send it to you, Viveka. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. And thank you to everybody. And may you all be happy and well. And may your practice yield beautiful, delicious fruit.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So we finish now, and bye everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.